Hi there, I'm Scott, and this is GreatScott Knitting. Happy Passover, Chag Pesach Sameach, and Shabbat Shalom. Tonight is Friday night, and this is the seventh day of the Omer. One more to go, and that makes it the sixth day in the Omer. I missed the fifth day in the Omer and the sixth day of Passover, because life just got in the way. So I'm going to be doing a dual episode tonight. Although it's a dual episode, but my progress is not double. My progress is actually stalled. I'm actually no further along in my Cold Pale Moon shawl than I was last time I recorded. At least I don't think I am. Anyway, that's how it's looking. I'm loving it. I'm still thinking it's a gorgeous, fun piece of knitting, so I can't wait to make additional progress over the weekend. So last time I did record, it was I was talking about some of the aspects that I think that take us from slavery into freedom, and then freedom into a free society. And I think some of the things that requires is the ability to be personally responsible for one's own choices, one's own actions, and to then focus those choices on those things we can do, not on those things we can't. And I think that naturally leads us to want to know what contribution we want to make to the world and to society. And then that naturally leads to what do we need to do to act on that vision, to put that vision into reality through integrity and through execution on that vision. And we do that by focusing on what those things that are most important to us in every day, in every week, in every month. And that leads us from, out of slavery and into freedom. But we don't live in the world by ourselves, and so we have to exist with other people. And I think the best way to exist with other people in a free way is to first value the idea that there's enough out there for all of us. We can have an abundant attitude, so much so that we don't just go for what we want, that we can go for what I want and what you want as well. Having that mutual benefit out of our relationships, out of society, out of our everything that we do, we can always go for that idea and have that intent in mind. I think that idea of winning together naturally leads us to, or is dependent upon in some ways, that intermingled, if you will, the idea of listening to each other, of empathically listening to each other so that we can come to understand one another. I think mutual understanding is one of those huge keys to living well with each other in a society. And that requires communicating through empathy. Now, oftentimes, empathy is really at the art of listening, the skill of listening. A lot of times we'll hear each other, but we're not really listening. Oftentimes what we do is we listen with the intent to respond. Like, we'll listen, but we'll then ask questions from our own frame of reference. Like, oh, is it like that time when I did this? Or we'll listen to evaluate. Oh yeah, I totally agree. Or, wow, I don't think you're right. Or we might listen with the intent to advise. to give counsel, advice, solutions, and problems is like, oh, well, what you need to do is, or we'll listen with the intent to interpret, trying to figure out or analyze the other person. It sounds like you're someone who always has a challenge with that. Not very helpful. And it certainly doesn't lead to understanding. It leads to you being able to express yourself. When really what we want to do is listen with the intent to understand. And that requires a lot of being quiet. And sometimes we're not very good at being quiet when we listen. And it also requires setting aside our own story and to allow, allow the other person's story to take stage. And the way you can do that, and the way you can express your understanding of the other person, is by reflecting what you've heard. And the focus of that reflection is not on the words they've said, but on how they feel about what they said, about the emotion they're expressing as they're speaking. And then also, to some extent, the context of what they're saying, or the meaning behind what they've said. So if they're complaining about a friend who has betrayed them, you could say something like, sounds like their behavior really hurt you. Not judging it, not trying to fix it, not trying to make it all better. We often do want to fix things. So naturally, empathic listening is a skill and it takes practice. And if you're not good at it, that's okay. What's important is that your first intent is to listen, to understand the other person. That's what you really are going for. To really understand them. Not to fix them, not to agree or disagree, not to probe, not to go deeper, but to just be there in that moment with that person where they're at, not where you're at. Now, when you can do that really well, then you can express yourself. Then you can go deeper. You can offer your advice, but only after you understand them. Now, this idea of coming to that mutual understanding where you understand me and I understand you, then we can go for what we call creative cooperation. That idea that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. I think the best concept about this are musical groups. When you think of a symphony, there are all these different instruments that are beautiful when played alone, but there's something different that happens when they play together in a group. There are different overtones, timbres of sound, volume of sound changes, increases. There are just different things that go on when you work together, and the beauty is entirely different, and sometimes, and in many ways, grander, and certainly much more than simply adding up all the different parts. This idea of creative cooperation really kind of leads us into the necessity the absolute requirement to value and celebrate differences. By valuing and celebrating differences, we are able to get more out of life. I love this information that came out of a article on how diversity makes us smarter in the Scientific American journal. In there, it said decades of research by organizational scientists, psychologists, sociologists, economists, and demographers show that socially diverse groups, that is, those with diversity of race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, and the like, are more innovative than homogeneous groups. We can come to better solutions for our world, for each other, if there are different voices in the room. Not just voices like ours. And I think in a lot of ways in today's society, I think we're having a real struggle valuing differences. I know I have. And some of you out there may have as well had struggles trying to value opinions, thoughts, and ideas of other people. Now, I'm not saying that we all have the right to our own set of facts, to our own sciences. But we can have our own take on the meaning behind some of those things, on the impact that those things can have. And the real challenge is opening ourselves up to being wrong in our opinions and in our beliefs and in how we interpret the world. Now, when we value differences, that doesn't mean we have to agree with the other person. We just have to respect that they have another view and consider how that view might be beneficial to our view. And especially when we are looking at trying to find solutions to the myriad and multitudes of challenges and problems that we have in the world to solve. And even the smaller problems that we're just trying to solve in and of our own families and households and communities. The more people we get in the room, the better the solutions will be. And that comes out of this idea of going for what is called the third alternative. The third alternative is not my way and not your way, but our way, a higher way, a better way, as Stephen Covey would put it. The idea behind going for a third alternative would mean that first we have to agree that we want to listen to understand each other. Habit 5, if you will, that seek first to understand, then to be understood. We have to get to that mutual understanding of one another and be willing to do that. And then we have to take aspects of each of our viewpoints and come up with something new. Maybe I have a solution to the problem and you have a solution to the problem. But if we bring our ideas together and really kind of bounce even more new ideas off of each other, we'll come up with something else. Something that's not yours and not mine, but ours, that we could implement and maybe solve problems better. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying that these types of attitudes, skills, and I don't know, trying to go for that something better by bringing more people in will create a better result. Instead of fighting each other, instead of not valuing differences and butting heads. These are the things that I think actually create a more free, a more freeing society. Going for mutual benefit, going for mutual understanding, and going for creative cooperation, because we have a solid foundation in taking responsibility for ourselves and having a vision for ourselves and putting that vision for ourselves into action gives us that strong foundation, the roots by which we can withstand the winds of change and challenge, and also allows us to open up when we go into a relationship to seek mutual benefit, to seek to understand another person who has a completely different idea, and to be able to work cooperatively with them to create something new and amazing. Those things, I think, take us to that level of interdependence, that we rely on each other. And I think that's really important as we move forward. Now, there's one other idea that I do want to bring forth, but I'll bring that out tomorrow because I think it's also extremely important. So I'll leave it at that. I hope you are enjoyed this exploration of what I think it takes to be a better world, a more free people, to get us further out of Egypt and maybe closer to the Promised Land. So until the next time, may you have peace in your home and the fullness of joy for all who dwell there. Good night.